Welcome to Radio Free Endor. My name is Jonathan. Today I'm joined by Nick from the Inner Dorkdom, the Clonecast. How you doing today?
I'm doing well. How about you, Jonathan?
Good. Like the last episode, I asked, what was your first introduction to Star Wars?
Let's see. For me, that is it's before I was able to create long-term memories, if that makes sense. You know, when you're a little kid and you don't remember much, and so you think back to your youth. Like I cannot remember a time when I was not a Star Wars fan, if that makes sense. Because I was born in '78, so Episode 4 hit the year before I was born, and so my little baby years were Star Wars. But my first memory that I can recall of anything Star Wars related was probably watching Empire Strikes Back on HBO. But the first time I remember seeing it was not the first time I saw it, if that makes sense, because I remember watching it for like the third or fourth time. I had seen it before, but I don't remember, like I can't recall the very first time I saw something Star Wars related. I grew up with it. I watched the movies, I had the toys. It's been something that has been a part of me since I was, before you were born.
Yes. Just like me. I've always liked Star Wars and as well, and like you, I was big into Legos.
Yes.
I love me some Star Wars Legos.
You know, when I was a kid, Lego didn't do really any licensing. I mean, it was all just their sort of classic line. So you had the city line, and you had the pirates, and you had the castle, and that was about it. And to me, like the holy grail of Lego would have been Star Wars and or Star Trek, as I actually grew up as a huge fan of both. And so I would try to make my own, Millennium Falcon or X-Wing or Enterprise D or whatever it might be. And so I was trying to do that sort of thing myself, but I never could. And then finally in 99 or 98, when they announced there was going to be actual Star Wars Lego, I was like, this is the greatest thing ever.
Yeah, I know. So epic. I was so excited. And then, of course, they started coming out with all the other movies ones and all the Ultimate sets.
Exactly.
Okay, so I think the first thing to get into is this huge news about... I found out about the cast of Episode 7 by a tweet. I think I was just doing some homework or something.
Mm-hmm.
And I just got this tweet that Episode 7 cast announced. And I just went to that picture.
Right.
And it had this whole group picture.
Yeah, I was at work, actually, and on a little break, and I was checking some things. And I think it may have been on Facebook, just scrolling through Facebook and weeding amongst the random stuff that people on my Facebook feed put up, and then it was just it was like nestled in there, just a sort of one of the many things that was scrolling by on Facebook. So it wasn't the sort of monumental, like, everyone stop what you're doing, we have a special announcement. It was just like, oh, hey, real quick, Nick, just to let you know, not really a big deal, but hey, the Star Wars Episode 7 cast has been revealed. I was like, am I reading this right? So I clicked, went to the website, saw the picture, and there it was. There they were, all black and white, sitting at a table, or actually I don't think there was a table, but just sitting in a big old circle. And I was
it's like
there it is.
Like Jedi Council.
Exactly. But with no Obi-Wan, which makes me cry inside, because I'm a huge Obi-Wan fan.
Yeah, I mean, and this was like official. It was StarWars.com. I mean, you can't get more official than that.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't like, what's the one site these days, Latino Review, that seems to get a lot of the rumors and such. I mean, this wasn't Latino Review. This was, it was StarWars.com, and there was the official, here it is, there's the picture, this is real, and so, I was like, well, alrighty then. I really thought they were going to do it like yesterday, like on May the 4th. Like, I thought they were going to time it to, and guess what? It's May the 4th be with you. Bam, Star Wars cast. But they did it like a few days early, so I was like, oh.
Yeah, that's what I kind of thought. But I guess on the other hand, Sunday morning or Sunday in general, not so much for Hollywood.
Yeah, that's a good point. Everybody's kind of sleeping it off or going to worship or going to going to the lake or something. So I guess, do it while people are around their computers.
Right. So I guess we'll just kind of go around this council and just kind of discuss the different people. I mean, it's mostly new people, which I think is good.
Yeah. In fact, that was one thing. Josh can't be with us tonight because he's studying for finals. Everyone, so because we were going to try to get him on too, but that was one thing that he pointed out. We're talking about is like you say that a lot of these people are new, and not just new to Star Wars, but haven't necessarily done tons of things. So that's kind of cool. But I guess we'll get there as we get there. So
right. So of course we got J.J. Abrams, and then to the right of him would be Harrison Ford, grumpy old Harrison Ford. So it's like he's kind of enjoying talking to J.J.
Yeah.
He's not wondering, when is Andy going to start? We're going to do Andy. And then we have Daisy Ridley right beside. And I've looked on her IMDb. I mean, we're just talking about what they've done like on screen. There's
Right.
very possibility that these people have done theater, and that's how we saw their talent. These aren't people they just picked up off the street. We
Right.
just from that little short film, I could tell. I mean, she wasn't. The short film was called Blue Season.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just her being completely terrified and trying to get out of this place. And I think just from that little thing, I mean, she looks good. I mean, I've seen stuff with the others. We'll get to that, but she's really the most mysterious. I mean, one way you can tell if the person's unknown. I mean, a lot of these people, like IMDb, they don't have their birth dates.
Right.
They don't have their birth dates on IMDb. That's a possibility.
It's like no one knows who you are because we don't know when you're born.
Right. I mean, her whole IMDb can basically be fit like on a 15-inch screen or something.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think, I mean, I'm not sure how much you've delved into the EU, which we'll get to later, but I know a lot of people are saying perhaps a Jaina Solo.
Yeah. Yeah, I saw that. Oh, there was some article I was looking at, and I don't remember. Now that the news hit, it seems like there's kind of been a flurry of activity. So I've looked at a bunch of different websites, and so I don't remember where I was. It was some article, and I think it was talking about her. It was talking about Daisy Ridley, and they made that same point that maybe that's who she was going to be playing. And of course, when I read that, I thought, do we really know? I mean, I know the answer is no, but I mean, really, do we know that even those characters are going to be around? The EU characters, because we know the EU is not going to be the official story going forward. Sorry, but what about? I mean, it's like to me, it's not a foregone conclusion that you'll even have the Solo kids.
Right.
But then again, it could be, given that the official position is if the writers like something from the EU, they'll take it.
Right. And I think it's also, I've listened to other people talking about how people are like sitting next to each other might kind of explain why they're parts or something. So Daisy Ridley is in between Carrie Fisher and Harrison Ford. So that
Right.
could be an indication, that, what I mean?
Yeah, I think I forgot who it was. It seems like I saw that somewhere too. People were speculating on that. And that makes good sense because if you're thinking about, it was Todd, who's sometimes on the inner Dorkdom. Todd was pointing that out, that same kind of deal, that if you look at the way people are sitting, and he made the point that, if you look on the left side of the image where you've got Mark Hamill is not sitting next to a woman. Because we were talking about the whole Mara Jade deal, and George Lucas had said that, in the story that he would tell after episode 7 or after episode 6, Luke wouldn't get married. And so the question is, well, are they going to bring in someone like Mara Jade? Well, you look at the picture, and who is Mark Hamill sitting next to? He's got Anthony Daniels on one side and Andy Serkis on the other. So neither one of them are going to be playing Mara Jade because we know who both of them. Well, we don't know who Andy Serkis is going to be playing, but I'm sure it's CG. So it's not a lady. So
usually Mara Jade, I think, would be played by a lady.
You would hope so. I think that would probably work better.
Yes.
I mean, I've seen her picture on covers of EU books, and I've read some EU books with her, and I think you got to get a lady to do that. So she's not there, so that's kind of interesting. But yeah, like you say, on the right side of the picture, you've got Daisy right in between Carrie and Harrison, and she kind of looks like she could be their offspring. I mean, the whole sort of family resemblance deal. It's, at least to me, it seems like.
Yeah, I know what you mean. and also, I mean, these cast members, they're pretty young. I mean,
Right.
when I noticed that. I mean, I'm almost 24, so when some of these, a lot of them are younger than me, so
Right.
makes me feel a tad bit old. She's like 22 or something, but then they always make them like a few years younger than they are. So
Right.
she might be playing like an 18-year-old or something. I think that's a possibility.
Yeah, I agree. Which then, if you think about the math of it, so this is about 30 years later, and if she's about 18, then that means that it was about 12 years after episode 6. I mean, I guess that's possible, because I was thinking it's like, well, Han and Leia are almost old enough to be her grandparents, but
yeah.
But hey, maybe in a galaxy far, far away, you have babies when you can have them when you get older. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, how do you explain Yoda? We never know. Him with Yaddle.
Right, exactly. Yeah, exactly. So age is just a number in the Star Wars universe. It doesn't seem to have the sort of, ramifications that it does for us. So I wouldn't be surprised if she does end up playing, their daughter. I mean, she may not, but I think it's definitely a possibility.
Yeah, and so maybe 20, maybe 22. It's rarely the other way around.
Yeah,
actors play it older. So
yeah, it's like we're gonna get someone 25 and she's gonna be 12. It's
yeah.
never. She's gonna be 25 and we're gonna have her play someone that's 37. Doesn't happen.
Right. So Peter Mayhew, one of the only couple, that's actually studying their script intently.
Yeah, which is funny given it's like, well, you got to memorize all those lines of dialogue there, Peter.
Yep, all you do is just wave your hands, choke on Lando's neck, just kind of pilot the ship.
But I'm really glad that they got him, because just the mannerisms that Peter Mayhew has, I mean, that is Chewbacca so much. Really, I mean, more than the growls, it's that manner that he has. And I don't think anybody could have pulled it off the way Peter did. So I'm glad that they got him back and that he's well enough to play the character again.
Agree. Yeah, and I remember a few weeks ago before this announcement, he was going to be attending a convention, but because of unforeseen filming, he had to drop out.
Right.
And we know how the big three were appearing in London, and it was just a matter of time until the announcement. And I know that I heard that there's still one female important role or less minor major role that's yet to be announced. So.
Yeah, it seems like I remember hearing that like there was some kind of uproar in certain circles on the internet that there weren't more females, and Lucasfilm said, "Well, don't worry, there's more ladies coming. This is not the entire cast, so that'll be interesting." And I guess you've heard the rumor that it might be like Obi-Wan's granddaughter.
Yeah, that's definitely a interesting thing to think about. I mean, it's a little far out there.
Yeah, I agree.
I mean, I guess, him and Satine, when I guess they were together, I guess it would have been like before episode 1.
Right.
He would have been, I guess, I don't know, like 20 or so, or 18.
Yeah, because he's 25 in episode 1, so.
I mean, it's just so, I don't know. I mean, then they had a kid, like a secret, like I don't know, like forbidden love, and then they had a kid, and then the kid somewhere in the galaxy that he finally popped up. I mean, It's just kind of it's kind of hard to imagine that. I think that's one of those examples where people are just pulling for straws or something, but
yeah, because it doesn't feel Star Warsian, the whole, like you say, the secret baby. That's I remember when I watched episode 2, and at the very end when Anakin and Padme get married, and this maybe shows how weird I am. I was kind of surprised. I was pleasantly surprised, but I was surprised because they had been talking about, we can't, we got to keep the relationship a secret. And then, boom, they get married. But it's like, that's the thing. George made it a point to be like, look, they're going to get married, and then they're going to have the babies. So for Obi-Wan Kenobi, of all people, to have a love child out there somewhere, that just doesn't feel right.
Yeah, it really doesn't. I mean, I remember back when the episode, it was in season 3, right? Mid-season 3, with all the political episodes we were first introduced to. Yeah. And we found out that he was like, I would have left the Jedi Order if you would have said.
Yeah, that was amazing.
and then of course, the death of Satine later. Wow.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Intense. Um, you know.
Yeah, and the way that Obi-Wan dealt with that, as opposed to the way Anakin deals with loss, I thought that was a great chance for them to kind of do a compare and contrast kind of deal between the two ways of handling things. But yeah, so we're definitely revelations about Obi-Wan is something that has happened with Satine, but yeah, I feel like that one I can get behind because he was younger, and when he says that when if you had back in the day asked me to leave the order, I would have done so. So Obi-Wan's talking about a decision he would have made as a young man. But then, and I don't know, it seems like, okay, but then he's going to grow out of that, and then he wouldn't do anything rash like, have a baby. But, who knows?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of other things that were even other things like, Luke making a Jedi Council. We're still not sure about those, but I think those are a lot better bets.
Yeah, I agree.
Say that. I mean, I think there is some. I've heard this fan split between, would Luke make a full Jedi Order like, past millenniums, or would he go to a more monk-like state and go to like train on Tatooine or Dagobah or something? So right. I think that's a big speculation.
Yeah, because I think it could go either way. I mean, that's because there were mistakes that were made by the Jedi during the time of the Republic, and I think an argument could be made. I think the argument could also be argued against, but I think the argument could be made that there was a sense in which the Jedi having the temple and being connected to the government is something that was inherent sort of in their downfall, and that if you don't go that route, then you avoid those problems. But then on the other hand, it almost seems like if Luke says, okay, well, they were a part of the government or they were connected with the government and bad things happen, so we got to, like you say, we got to kind of go and do the monk kind of deal. That seems like the exact type of overreaction that the Jedi during the Old Republic days had about attachment. You might be attached to someone and something bad might happen to them and you might get mad and turn to the dark side. So that's it, no more attachments. It's like that kind of overreaction, and Luke realized that detachment was good. That's what brought his father back. So I think it could go either way. I think Luke might find a way to sort of split the difference, find that middle path.
Yeah, there's a lot to be done, and I guess we'll between those 30 years, and we'll just have to find out what he's changed. So Domhnall Gleeson, he's another kind of unknown. He's the big like four he's credited with are About Time, Dredd, Harry Potter, Deathly Hallows, and True Grit. Right. I mean, I think About Time, I haven't actually seen it, but he plays like a time traveling. He discovers he can time travel and see what's happens in his own life. So with Rachel McAdams, Big Notley. So
right.
So that's like his that's basically really his only as far as a feature film, his only lead one. But so have you seen Dredd?
I have seen Dredd. I loved Dredd.
Yes, very good. I recently saw it, and I wish I had before because
yeah,
I could have helped make that movie succeed.
Yeah, I feel bad for not buying a ticket because it's like, man, if just a few more people had bought tickets, but are you do you follow the Make a Dredd sequel group on Facebook?
I don't.
I do, because I'm like, hey, I'm gonna give them my support on Facebook, and like they post with some frequency. I mean, a lot of times they just post fun pictures to keep Dredd in everybody's mind, but they posted, I don't know, it was a couple of weeks ago, a video with Carl Urban saying that he was telling everybody, he said, all the folks there on Facebook that are part of the Make a Dredd sequel, thanks for what you're doing. Keep it up. It's making a difference. We're really trying hard to be able to make a sequel. So I think it's kind of neat that the sort of fan response after the fact might actually get that sequel made. So I like you say, I wish I could have supported it earlier, but I really liked it. I thought it was great.
Yeah, and I know that a lot of times when they want to make a sequel, almost they always up the budget. But I guess in this case, I don't think they'd have to. And now that it's done decently well on home video and a attain the cult status. I think it's a possibility that it could do better.
Yeah.
A sequel could do very well. It could be better. I mean, I think there's some instances where a box office bomb wouldn't, like, for example, Serenity, which didn't do well, and I'm not sure if it would do well. A sequel would do well. It's just kind of but that's a whole nother podcast.
Yeah.
But I really think I didn't see the original Judge Dredd with Sylvester Stallone.
Oh yeah, Mr. I am the law.
Yeah, I heard it's a lot different. And then have you seen True Grit? It's a remake.
I'm very embarrassed to say that I have not, because I love westerns. I did not become a fan of westerns until I was in college, really. I mean, I liked a couple when I was younger, but it was in college that I really started to appreciate the genre. And that was one of the remake was one of those that I'm thinking I've got to go see. And then it got out of the theater, and then it came out on DVD and Blu-ray, and I just haven't seen it yet. But I hear everybody says that it was just amazing.
Yeah, I know Haley Steinfeld is going to be in Kyle Newman's Fairly Legal movie.
Right.
So I'm definitely looking forward to seeing that. So Anthony Daniels getting ready to put on the metal suit again.
Very nice. I have seen him in person.
Yeah, as have I.
Was it at the for me, it was the Star Wars in concert thing. So I saw him in person, but not like up close, because he was on a stage and I was in a seat. But
yeah, I went to Star Wars in concert as well. I did get his autograph. And I shook his hand. I have no idea where that autograph is. It's somewhere.
Right.
When we moved, it's somewhere amongst all the stuff we moved. So maybe I'll find it someday. So Mark Hamill, looking better. I mean, I think in the last 10 years hasn't been doing so good, but he's looking a little better. I think it's amazing what Hollywood can do, and some little some exercise can do.
Right.
I think we'll be ready.
Yeah, and it is interesting that when they do movies like this, where the sequel comes out years and years later, like the gap between the third Die Hard and the fourth Die Hard.
Yes.
That was a decade and a half, something like that. I mean, this is a 30-year gap. I cannot think of, off the top of my head, I can't think of another movie where the gap between films was 30 years.
Well, Tron and Tron Legacy.
Yeah, because Tron was, the first one was mid 80s, so that's probably pretty close. And yeah, if you watch Tron and then you watch Tron Legacy, you get the whiplash with Jeff Bridges and Bruce Boxleitner, because they look quite different. I mean, I think they both hold up well, and I mean, obviously Jeff Bridges doesn't hold up as well in that movie, but that's part of the point.
Right.
I thought Bruce Boxleitner's doing all right. It's like, okay, I mean, that's he always got that gravelly voice still. So, but yeah, that's the only other one. So you're right, but those are the only two I could think of, and so it's weird to have a gap of 30 years.
Yeah, really.
The last time we saw this guy on screen, he was 30, and now he's 60 or something like that. I mean, that's a huge thing. But yeah, I think you're exactly right. Hollywood performs magic and some exercise and some, just sort of psyching yourself up. So yeah, I think that it'll be still surreal, but it won't be a crazy shock when we see them, in their full, costumes and up on the big screen. And look, there's Luke. And I think it'll be pretty neat.
I know I saw I don't know if you saw Anchorman 2, but Harrison Ford made a cameo.
Yeah.
At the end, and he looked really good.
Yeah, Harrison's doing all right. The last thing that I remember, because I haven't seen Anchorman 2, Josh has, and he's told me about it, and I've seen a couple of clips on YouTube, but the last thing that I remember seeing him in, where I sort of got a good look at him, and I haven't even seen this movie, but just I've seen the trailers in the theater, was Ender's Game. And I was like, yeah, okay, if he comes back as Han Solo, that'll work. I could see that. Because, I mean, really, if Harrison Ford wasn't going to come back, you can't have Han Solo anyway. You can't recast that part. But still, I was thinking, okay, this is kind of what it'll look like. All right, yeah.
Yeah. So, I guess moving on to Andy Serkis. Here is a very famous guy in Hollywood that many have actually not seen his face.
Yeah.
You know his work.
Right.
I mean, really, I think what I know him best as is Gollum, and of course, for that little time, we also saw him as Smeagol.
Mm-hmm.
Before he became the creature Gollum for that short time. But
Right.
besides that, he was Gollum doing the stop motion thing. He was
Mm-hmm.
a creepy monster obsessed with a ring.
Right.
He was also, I didn't know this. I didn't know he was that. I didn't know he was King Kong because I always thought little.
Right. Right. Yeah, he's done. That's the thing. He found that niche of I will be your motion capture CG creature guy.
Yes.
He was what's the newest Planet of the Apes movie that they did. I think
Uh,
wasn't he the like Caesar the main monkey or ape
yeah,
in that?
Rise of the Planet of the
Yeah,
Apes.
yeah. So that's kind of his deal. So I mean, they haven't told us that he's playing a CG character, and it'd be kind of crazy if they decided to cast him and have him actually physically, fleshly be in the movie as as a human being. But yeah, I
Yeah.
figure he's probably got to be doing the motion capture
Yeah,
deal.
it's really hard for me to imagine because I mean, for that little bit that I saw him before he became the monster, he
Hmm.
was good, but it's just that, it's just hard for me to imagine that they'd get Andy Serkis for something besides,
Yeah, Andy Serkis is going to be a Jedi.
Oh yeah.
That'd be funny. He'd be like, "Use the Force," instead of "He wants it, he needs it." It's like,
Yes.
okay, give him back his lightsaber. He wants it. He needs it.
Yeah. So I guess so it really could go either way, he
Yeah,
could be multiple parts,
that's true.
you never know. Voice actors do that,
Mhm.
anything like that. Oscar Isaac, unfortunately this is one of those movies I did not catch
Right.
last year. I'm usually pretty big completionist as far as Oscar nominated movies, but Inside Llewyn Davis,
Hmm.
which he and Adam Driver both starred in.
Okay.
So I think that's really his big like starring role.
Right.
But I've also seen him in Drive,
Mhm.
and then he was also in Robin Hood and Sucker Punch, which
Yeah.
I haven't seen.
Yeah, I haven't seen either of those. I know Josh has seen Sucker Punch, but yeah, I'm sad to say that I haven't seen any of those. So I
Yeah,
guess I've been living under a rock. It's really embarrassing.
yeah. I mean, I hear it's good. I hear it's not very a little funny, but kind of depressing. So I'll eventually get to seeing it. I was just earlier. I was watching a couple of his performances. Very, very different. One of them, he's playing like a Mexican.
Hmm.
The other one, he's playing like a Russian, like chauffeur or something. So I think he can wear a lot of hats, play minor roles, play major roles.
Hmm.
I think if I watch him inside Llewyn Davis, I think that'll give us. I'm gonna guess that that's when they watch. That's when they saw like some of his talent.
Right. Yeah, that would make sense. Yeah.
Because the other ones, I mean, really, I think he's been in other feature. I think I mean, they kind of look at the whole body of work,
Hmm.
including his other leading. But I think really, you know, picking him for something like a dramatic role that's
Hmm.
also a small kind of movie as well.
Right. Right. Exactly.
And he got an Oscar nod for that.
Yeah. And I
So,
think this is that whole work with a lot of the people that we're sort of talking about now. It is that whole really Star Wars tradition of hiring actors, casting roles with people that are not overly well known. That yeah, they've done something here or there, and maybe they've gotten some recognition, but they're not huge names. It's like I was talking to a cousin of mine about the casting news the other day, and I made that point, and he said, "Well, yeah, but now wait a minute." He said, "What about in the prequels? I mean, you had Samuel L. Jackson." I was like, "Okay, yeah, granted." And he's like, "And you had Liam Neeson." I was like, "Yeah, but Liam Neeson wasn't the big name then that he is now."
yeah, not even close.
You
Not even
know,
close.
I mean, cinephile type people, sure, they knew about him, but he wasn't this sort of broad, everybody knows him, and if there's a movie with him in it, we got to go see it. So, yeah, that's something that I think all of the Star Wars films have done. You'll have a couple of well-known people here and there, and then you got a lot of folks that are quote unquote relatively unknown, and that was something that for both Josh and me, it was a little, I don't know, it put us at ease a little bit to think, okay, there's an area where we're going with the traditional Star Wars approach. And anything that sort of is going to be consistent with the traditional way of doing things, and for me, traditional includes the prequels, but the traditional way of doing things, I think, is a good thing. So, relatively unknowns, right on.
Yeah, and I think kind of like the prequels with Natalie Portman, she would eventually, I think the earliest thing I've seen her in was before even her voice was different. Leon the Professional as like a 12-year-old kid, and even that she was a brilliant actress. And so we transitioned between that to Star Wars, then to Black Swan, and Daisy Ridley, she could become someone else that gets kind of an Oscar nod or something like that later down the road.
Right.
Just like Harrison Ford. I mean, unfortunately, he's only gotten one nod, none others, but he's been in some great performances. Especially mainly the 20th century, not as much now, but Witness was fantastic. Line of Fire. When he played Jack Ryan for those couple movies. So, and Raiders of the Lost Ark, one of my favorite adventure movies of all time.
Oh, the Indiana Jones movies.
I mean, it's just amazing in that. And, I guess the rumor was that he would only be Han Solo if they could give him a Indiana Jones. That rumor's still up in the air. I think eventually, it'll be either denied or proven that it was correct. But I think we'll eventually get an Indiana Jones. I know whether it be a reboot or a continuation.
Yeah, if the rumor turns out to be true, I feel like, hey, that's a win-win because we get him back as Han Solo and we get another Indiana Jones movie because those are, the Indiana Jones movies, maybe they don't have these days the sort of pop culture awareness that Star Wars has, but to me the Indiana Jones movies are right up there in terms of just greatness and fun and excellence. And so if we can get another one with him as Indy, I'm all for it. And again, I'm one of those people that I liked Crystal Skull. It's not my favorite of the Indiana Jones films, but I enjoyed it. And so they want to do another one, I'm good with it, but don't reboot it. If after Harrison Ford is retired and they want to continue the Indiana Jones franchise in some way, figure something out, but just please don't do a reboot. I don't feel like that needs a reboot. I don't think it would benefit from one, but that's just me being a bitter old guy, I guess.
Yeah, and speaking of Harrison Ford, another thing is, the whole thing how he's not so fond of Han Solo, and if I met him, I'd more likely bring up Indiana Jones than Han Solo.
Yeah, that's a good call, yeah.
Because I know there's that thing where, he didn't want to be woken up from the carbonite. He wanted to die with the carbonite. So, do you think that they'll kill him off in 7 or maybe 8? What do you think?
I think that from a practical standpoint, if Harrison doesn't want to do all 3 new films, or if it's a situation where he wants to have that sort of dramatic moment for Han Solo, on the one hand, I could see the appeal of them wanting to do that, but then on the other hand, how much is it going to upset us if they kill off Han Solo? It'll be like, well, why do you even bring him back? If you didn't bring the character back, if you just talked about him, if Han is always, he's over there doing something. If Luke's there in the new movies, but Han and Leia are off somewhere doing something and we never see him on screen, that would be preferable to seeing him on screen and killing him off, at least I think for a lot of people.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So I think that if you kill him off, it can be dramatic, but then you're also upsetting people and they might think you should have just left him out of it if you're going to do that. So that's a tough choice that I think, Kathleen Kennedy and whoever the writers on 8 and 9.
JJ, yeah. That's another thing, is JJ going to continue with directing or going to be a director? That's another thing up in the air. I know a new person's going to direct Star Trek 3, but...
Right. I'd be okay with, and I say this not just because of my sort of skepticism of JJ and Star Wars, because it might turn out that he does a great job. That very well could be the case. But even if he does, my thought is I kind of would like for them to go back to the way it was in the original trilogy, where you had a different director for each one. That's not to say that I wish they had done that for the prequels. It's like if George wants to direct a movie, great, awesome. But if it's not George directing it, then hey, I'm cool with the idea of getting a different director for each one. So I think that I'd be okay if they say, all right, next movie, episode 8 is going to be Brad Bird, or it's going to be, fill in the blank, whoever it may be. I'd kind of like to see some variety, but you never know. I mean, it may be that thing if he does a great job and they just want to stick with him.
Right. And I know the whole thing about, I guess as far as going back to the Mark Hamill thing, as far as offspring goes, I mean, Carrie Fisher, she's force sensitive, so I mean, is she going to go into more of a diplomat role or being trained by Luke? I mean, the whole thing Yoda said, pass on what you have learned. So,
right.
I mean, I don't know. I mean, I know in the EU she did both.
Right.
I think mainly the diplomatic. I mean, that's what I'm kind of wondering. I think a lot of things I noticed that there's a lot of instances there's like two choices, like which way they're going to go.
Right. And sort of the different combinations of choices that they could make give you a very different series of films, so it'll be interesting. That's one of those areas where I kind of think the EU probably had a pretty good, take on it, at least in the broad strokes of clearly she's going to be concerned about diplomacy and politics because that's what she did even when we first met her in episode 4. And of course, now we know that that's sort of the tradition from her mom. That's her mom's legacy. So I would imagine that she would have done that. But then clearly the hint in episode 6, the foreshadowing, is that she is going to cultivate her ability to use the Force. So sort of a Force-wielding diplomat is kind of a neat idea. That I wouldn't mind seeing on screen, but you never know how they could go about dealing with that. It may have been the sort of thing that by the time episode 7 rolls around, she did some Jedi training, but she didn't really stick with it, maybe, and so that's not really a major part of her. But then maybe at some point she has to sort of use the Force, Leia, in some way. So it'd be kind of interesting to see what they do there.
Right, and I guess the whole question is that, we have Luke Skywalker, who is, we're assumed going to be the Grand Master,
Right.
I mean, really, as far as we know, it's really only him. We're going to assume, we're going to have a red lightsaber, someone that's going to maybe discover through a Sith holocron. I don't think I want a ghost Palpatine. I don't really want to open that can of worms.
Yeah, I'm anti that. Let Palpatine be gone.
Yeah, I know some people really wanted to come back, and I don't really want a clone.
No.
But I think there's got to be some kind of I mean, they just kind of tell us something that kind of happens since it's a 30-year gap. I mean, during that time, did he leave and because there's always people being born that are Force sensitive.
Right.
At least that's the kind of impression we get.
Mm-hmm.
So. I think that he might do some scouting out. Maybe, I guess he just has to kind of, train someone that's maybe, teen age, and then wait till some point where Daisy Ridley's character is old enough. I mean, I guess there's just so many options,
Yeah, I can imagine it would have been difficult from a writing standpoint when you do have so many different directions you can go. By the time you get to like the third film in a trilogy, okay, you've already got your characters established, you've already got a plot, and your options are more narrowed based on the constraints of what's come before. But when you're just starting out and you've got this blank canvas, I bet that's intimidating. And of course, JJ and Lawrence Kasdan had the benefit of George Lucas had already written a treatment, so a lot of the roadmap, at least I hope a lot of the roadmap was already laid out for him. But still, yeah, I mean, so wide open on what could happen. And that's new for us as Star Wars fans, to be in a situation where we have absolutely no idea whatsoever what's going to happen. Because with the prequels, all the details were unknown, but the broad strokes we knew. But this, we have no idea. We don't even know what the kind of the bad guy is going to be. Like with the prequels, we knew it was going to be Palpatine rising to power, but now who knows? You know, is it even going to be a Sith? Is it going to be something else? Which I personally would prefer it if the overarching big bad in 7, 8, and 9, the antagonistic force is somehow connected to the Force, okay, but I don't want them to be Sith. If nothing else, let it be something different, just from the standpoint of I don't want it to take away from what Anakin did in Episode 6.
So maybe be kind of like I don't know, kind of like a witch, kind of in between.
That's exactly kind of what Josh and I the other day when we were recording an episode, which I haven't gotten up yet, and that's me being a total loser. But we were talking about the arc in season 6 of the Clone Wars with Jar Jar and Mace Windu, and mild spoiler alert. There's some Force Witch stuff that comes into play there. And we were talking about, and I think maybe Josh had brought up the idea, it's like, well, what if they did something like that? And like you say, it's something somewhere in the middle. It's still Force stuff, because that's part of what Star Wars is, but then it doesn't take away from Anakin bringing balance. So that could be kind of a neat approach, a middle ground.
Yeah, and I think another thing is that, you know, if you look at the EU,
Mm-hmm.
you know, which I think they'll take some little pieces of to use in their own.
Yeah.
If you look at the EU, it all happens again and again, and it'll keep happening. Just
Right.
like in Battlestar Galactica, it happened again.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
I mean, I never completed the second Knights of the Old Republic, but when I saw the synopsis, the only Jedi left. So in 5 years, everybody was killed off.
Right.
The game wouldn't run well on my PC anyway, so that was the end of that.
Yeah.
But so I think there's a possibility that, I mean, could a whole Sith Empire return? I mean, I don't know. It's kind of far-fetched.
Yeah.
I mean, I think evil's always out there, and that there might be a Sith holocron. The galaxy is so big.
Right.
You know, it's always possible that something leaked out. I mean, I'm thinking that, you know, my hope is that they'll just go in somewhere complete new.
Right. Yeah, you know, and Star Wars has always had that mythology element to it. So it's like, okay, you know, with episodes 1 through 6, you kind of dealt with this type of evil that Palpatine represents. Maybe there's a different type of evil to deal with 7 through 9. You know?
Right. I mean, we had the Sun. You know, that was the Mortis trilogy. You know,
right.
That was different.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And that would be great if they somehow brought some of that back in. You know, they somehow pulled in. I mean, I'm not necessarily expecting to see, you know, the Sun, but it would be neat to bring in some way some of those ideas that they developed in the Clone Wars. Just, I mean, one, to tie everything together even more, but then two, to really surprise us and to kind of go in a direction that's been foreshadowed, but that is still new. Because how do you create a villain for the last third of a trilogy of trilogies, you know?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard, definitely hard. We're gonna get to an actor that is a possibility. When we get there. But so I think the next one is a African British actor, John Boyega. And just today, I rented out from my college's library, Attack the Block. You know, because I figure, you know, there's got to be something that, you know, he started, and it's a Nick Frost movie, loosely Nick Frost, you know, kind of like the Blood and Ice Cream trilogy.
Right.
So it's like an action comedy. I mean, I didn't really laugh very many times, to be honest.
Right.
I mean, sci-fi. It was more of, I kind of saw it as an action sci-fi slapstick.
Gotcha.
I mean, it wasn't even funny like Shaun of the Dead,
right,
or The World's End. So that, I mean, he had a katana, you know, a samurai sword. So I think he played Moses or Mose. So I think he's a good bet. he's around, he's like 20 something. So I think I'm not really sure, could he play, a Jedi that Luke Skywalker somehow found, like an infant. And that's another thing. What's the whole thing about, because I know currently, in the prequels, they get him from a young age.
Right.
So how does Luke handle that now?
Yeah. Is that one of those things that he says, that was a good idea, let's keep doing that? Or does he say that caused more trouble than it was worth, and it was based on that whole fear of attachment idea that I've sort of rejected, so we don't have to worry about getting them when they're babies and teaching them not to be attached? Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how the Jedi propagate, I guess you might say, from this point on. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I know in the EU, I'm pretty sure they just, because it was all about family, and I think that's one big part of Star Wars, is it's about family. So I think, somehow connected to family, whether it be, Han, Leia, and Luke's kids, or it be some kind of lineage, some kind of ancestry going back, where kind of, I don't know, like Qui-Gon's family, some kind of family tree broke off, and we're still not quite sure about how, the Force transfers from person to person.
Yeah, that's very true.
So I think we'll just have to see, I mean, I noticed that, they're, trying to, I know Billy D. Williams, not listed here. Maybe he'll bring him in for the next one.
Yeah, I hope so. We need some Lando.
Yeah. So I think, Boyega, so kind of like Daisy Ridley, he's pretty open book.
Right.
He was also in a movie called Imperial Dreams. I think it was actually an American film. Okay. Yeah. So I think that's another one he's known for, but really, I mean, a lot of these new people, they have plenty of experience, but mainly, I think that's the key, supporting.
Right.
That's the key, supporting. So I think, they take these little bits, little segments of their supporting roles. You know what I mean? And I think the Blue Season, like a short film, that's a perfect thing.
Right.
I think continuing, Adam Driver, another Inside Llewyn Davis, he co-starred with Oscar Isaac. The only other thing, he was also in Lincoln, which is it was a huge cast, and everybody was in it. Half of Hollywood was in it. So I think I didn't really notice him. He could have been in the Senate or Congress, somewhere.
Right.
He was also in a Francis Ha movie, and then another popular series right now. He's in an HBO series by Lena Dunham called Girls, which is very kind of a dark kind of comedy, very, very adult. So I think when kids see Adam Driver, unless they've seen Lincoln, which is, semi-family friendly.
Right.
Unless they've seen Lincoln
and everything, right.
So I think besides that, I think they're going to be pretty, I mean, I think a lot of these unknowns, they won't have any clue who they are because they've mainly done more mature roles like Girls. Right. I mean, out of all these things, as far as all their work, that's probably the most mature thing of all these movies.
Right.
And work. I mean, he doesn't, I've only watched a few episodes, but, I mean, it's not really appropriate to talk here, it's just kind of he doesn't really, I mean, it's Girls, so it's really about these four girls, but Lena Dunham, Adam Driver plays Lena Dunham's boyfriend, and, I don't know, maybe as the series goes on, he becomes a bigger part, but from what I've seen him, he's just got the boyfriend in the apartment right now, so I think after, I noticed a lot of these actors, they have movies coming out later this year, so I think that'll be another indication.
Right, I think you're right, yeah.
Yeah, so the elephant in the room, Max von Sydow.
I'm telling you, I guess this shows my age, maybe, but, and it's also a function of the fact that of the new cast that have been announced, he is one of the only ones that I'm in many ways familiar with. But I'm all excited about him. I'm sure these other people are going to do great, but because I've know some of his work and everything, I'm like, this is awesome. This is great. To me, he's like the Peter Cushing or the Christopher Lee of this new trilogy, which is interesting because they both played bad guys. And so is he going to be playing a bad guy, or are they going to kind of go against expectation and cast him as some kind of a good guy?
Yeah, I've heard people say that possibly another like Obi-Wan figure.
Right. Yeah, and that makes sense, except that then you have to say, well, if he's older than Luke, and he is, well, was he a Jedi that survived the Purge?
Yeah, that's a possibility. I mean, we still don't. I think it might be a little more revealed in Rebels.
Right.
Of course, it's been revealed some in the books, and the video games like The Force Unleashed. But I think with Rebels, as the seasons, depends on how long it goes. I mean, what is the procedure to track down, and what's in Rebels will be the canon. So
yeah,
I think what's the process of finding? I think they split the Han and Leia. I mean, they split Luke and Leia up to kind of to
keep
separate
them safe,
the four,
right?
keep them safe. So I mean, in the EU, I read there's even some people that came from outside the galaxy.
Right.
Outside the Star Wars galaxy. So I guess we still don't really know fully how, like Yoda protected himself by, and of course you guys will get into that with the Yoda episodes.
Right.
Wow. So just like that, did other people find other Sith little pockets so that they could hide in the dark side?
Right. I mean, so it's so wide open. There's so many ways that it could go.
Yeah. I mean, one of his, he's a Swedish actor. And so one of his first works was Seventh Seal by Bergman.
Right.
Something I took an international cinema class and we learned about Bergman.
Mm-hmm.
And so Seventh Seal playing the knight who comes back to play chess with the devil. I mean, or the Reaper.
Right. Right.
And when I saw it, I'm like, wow, this is kind of creepy, black and white.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
So I think that's one that we can look at. I mean, and then we had like the next couple similar kind of 70s, 80s. We have The Exorcist.
Right. Classic.
Amazing. Classic movie. I mean, I can still get that image of her, of that green monk, and then him just taking his handkerchief out and just kind of like throwing it off.
Yep.
You know what I mean? And continuing. And then Flash Gordon, which I didn't actually know that he played Ming.
Right.
Flash Gordon, and I recently saw that, and I think maybe if I saw it as a kid, maybe I'd enjoy it more. But for me, it was just total. It was like ridiculous.
So this is a cheese fest.
I'm like, I mean, the song is great.
Right.
I think I first saw Flash Gordon in. I saw the actor. I think first in the movie Ted by Seth MacFarlane.
Right.
He made a guest appearance there, so I'm like, okay, I'll check out this Flash Gordon. It's definitely interesting. I don't know if they remade the movie. I don't know if I think they might give it a more serious tone, but I don't know.
Right.
So to be honest, I think this guy is someone that, we've seen a lot of the work, but he's not like a Harrison Ford or something that we kind of think about.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
Yeah. And his work, we have examples of him playing the good guy, and playing the bad guy. So he could do a great job with either one. He was also the voice of Vigo, the Carpathian, in Ghostbusters 2, which he went years and years and years without being credited for that. Not that like it was an injustice kind of thing. It was just, he chose not to be credited. And in fact, I didn't realize it until about the time they came out with the Ghostbusters video game a few years ago. He was on the credits as being the voice of Vigo, and that's when it clicked with me that it's like, that's him. So, it's kind of interesting to me. So I'm like, Vigo is going to be in the new Star Wars. So that's really neat.
Yeah, I know Minority Report, Steven Spielberg's Minority Report, it's one of his newer things he's done. It was in 2002, the villain. I mean, for me, it's just kind of like, I mean, I do distinctly remember him. Two things, The Exorcist and Shutter Island those two things that I
Right.
uniquely. I remember the Shutter Island, him just like, "Are you okay?" What have you seen Shutter Island?
I have not.
Okay.
It's one of those I wanted to see, but because I was a film major in college, and somehow over the past several years, I've just gotten out of the habit of being a good watcher of movies. So kind of embarrassing, but it is what it is, I guess.
I hear you. So I think either he could be a villain. I mean, I know another thing I've heard brought up is that Christopher Lee. He was back in episode 2. He was about the same age as Max is now, maybe
Right.
about the same. So that's another thing. I mean, he's in great shape. He's working. I mean,
Mhm.
he played a mute guy in Incredibly Loud and something.
Right. Yeah.
Incredibly that one.
Really.
He played
Really. Yeah.
he played a mute guy, and great performance. He got an Oscar nod. So yeah, I mean, he's still working great. He looks good, but I mean, like Alec Guinness, do they just want him just for one movie,
Right.
or do they want to? I mean, of course, they did Alec Guinness with the little Force Ghost, but
Right. Right.
that's a big question. You're hiring someone that's 85.
Yeah, I mean, how much do you expect? How many movies do you expect to get out of them? I mean, and that's not to be rude or morbid, but it is what it is.
I mean, there's a lot that CGI can do. Just look at Christopher Lee,
Right.
Count Dooku, you know. Look at some of those lightsaber duels with him flipping around. So it's possible he could be playing a dark side, or he could be playing a mentor on some temple Luke finds.
Right.
I mean, I think it's just so wide open. So out of all these, whether we've seen a lot of their work or just a little bit, I mean, I think it's really hard to figure out like what they're actually doing.
Right.
It's hard to kind of predict. And strangely, Max von Sydow was not in this picture.
I know that's kind of sad. I mean, that doesn't necessarily mean anything, but yeah, he's not in the big picture.
I mean, there are some people that are further in the back. I think, well, not in this photo, but I know there's another photo that they're kind of in the background.
Right.
Some other people. I know that there was a photo of Peter Mayhew being cut out, apparently, like on some articles, because if you cut him out, you get everybody else, but not him.
Huh.
I know recently Peter Mayhew, got the double knee replacement, so
Right.
glad he's back and all. And then, of course, the whole joke about Kenny Baker
Right.
in the R2. I remember apparently during filming they left him in the tin.
That's pretty bad. That's messed up.
I think in the prequels he didn't do as much, right?
Right. I know he did. I think he did more in episode 1 than he did in 2 and 3. I mean, he was in all 3 of them. But the increase in animatronic technology between the trilogies meant that he didn't have to do quite as much. But it was good that they brought him back, and I'm glad they're bringing him back again.
Yeah, I mean, really, one of his, as far as like Star Wars goes, I mean, it's hard for me to pick a movie, but as far as like moments, that would have to be Dagobah, and it always laughed when I was a kid just watching Yoda hitting the stick on R2, trying to pull that flashlight away. So
Yep.
that's my hope is that we get something kind of like that, those kind of funny moments
Right.
of anything like that. R2 being like, so I think that's basically it. I mean, of course we got Kathleen Kennedy in there. I think some people. I mean, I think there is. What's great is that Kathleen Kennedy is that if JJ is doing something that she doesn't feel George would like, she has some kind of she has more control.
Right. She's
You know what I mean?
the boss, and so if she doesn't like it, it doesn't happen. And I'm really glad that George Lucas, that is, picked his successor, as it were, the new president of Lucasfilm, and that he picked someone that has a sort of that more classic sensibilities or sensibility about things. I mean, because Kathleen Kennedy has been involved in so many great movies over the years, and apparently she and George know each other really well. So the fact that it's not being just turned over to some random hotshot new Hollywood person that everybody's obsessed with, the flavor of the month, as it were. I'm not saying that that's JJ. I'm just saying that instead of it being turned over to in a situation like that, you've got someone that has some experience, that has some wisdom, and that probably sees things more in the way George would than again someone just who's sort of younger.
Right. So I think for now, I mean, we still have that one female role.
Right.
We've heard rumors like Lepung. No, I can't say her name. I won't even
right.
try.
The complicated name. Yeah.
Yes, the complicated. 12 Years a Slave. She gave an excellent performance in that. So I think she's definitely a possibility.
Right.
If you notice, a lot of these actors, they're British, kind of
right.
like the original trilogy.
Exactly.
So I think for now, I think we can move on to the Rebels.
Okay.
Talking about this Rebels trailer, I have to admit, I mean, I was a tad bit underwhelmed, just a tad bit underwhelmed, because I mean, compared to all the other stuff, I remember there was a slew of each character, every actor talking about their character. I mean, it's definitely much better than that first thing we got.
But yeah, you're right. I mean, this trailer wasn't really. I mean, it was a trailer, because I was about to say this trailer wasn't a trailer, but it was a trailer. But it didn't, that I recall, give us really much of anything new that we hadn't already, in some way, already known about.
Yeah, I'm watching it right now, and it's just kind of like, I mean, we get some great shots and some stormtroopers. We have some, we kind of get the idea of Chopper,
right.
This very troublemaking droid. We get the Mandalorian. I'm not sure where they're going to go with that,
right.
because the Mandalorians are still kind of a, more of a EU kind of thing and a Clone Wars thing. So I think, I mean, I'm still really excited for it. And I mean, I think I'm just, I'm definitely ready to see some Star Destroyers, the Inquisitor. I mean, I don't know if you heard the Vanessa, the Vanessa Voice of Hera's review.
The interview that she did.
Yeah. She's been on podcasts, and she's definitely excited. Really, I mean, a lot of these, I mean, most of them, as of now, we haven't really had any Clone Wars people, talk to. It's all been new.
Right.
So, like, overall, I mean, kind of like Clone Wars and the prequels, we kind of know what the end game is.
Right.
But still, it's pretty open-ended, especially with these newer characters.
Oh, yeah. Because we already knew with the Clone Wars, most of the characters, we had already, at least the main ones, I mean, we knew what happened to them just 2 or 3 years later, because we'd seen episode 3. So we already knew, except for, Ahsoka and Rex. And it's funny, those were the big ones that were like, well, what's going to happen to him? What's going to happen to him? And even now, the show's over, and we're still like, what's going to happen to him? What's going to happen to him? So, yeah, we have all of these characters that we've never met before. And it's a wide open, again, it's the same theme of wide open possibilities. We know that there will be a Rebel Alliance, but we don't know what these individuals will do as they sort of help bring that about. We don't know what their individual destinies will be, and so it's fun to get that sort of sense of the unknown. I think visually, for me, it seems to me anyway, I could be wrong on this, because the show still looks good, but it definitely seems like perhaps they have a slightly smaller budget than the Clone Wars did. Maybe that's just me, but
yeah, I think you're right.
The style seems a little more. If I say simplistic, that sounds insulting, and I don't mean to be insulting, because simplistic is not a bad thing. But it seems to have a more direct sort of style to it than the Clone Wars. To some extent, I mean, they still clearly look related, I think, visually, but I think there is a bit of a difference there, and I'm okay with that, mainly because I trust Dave Filoni, I trust Killian Plunkett, or is it Plunkett or Plunkett? Either way, Killian, the chief, the head designer for the show, I trust those guys, and so I love the Clone Wars. I'm sure I have good reason to believe this is going to be great as well.
Yeah, as do I. I think there was the whole thing in the Clone Wars about on the Onderon arc, the whole
Right.
rumored that was like the start of the rebellion. I'm not sure how much of a connection they'll make with that. I think only time can tell. When I first heard Onderon, I was thinking Alderaan.
Right, exactly.
That was
the planet that got blowed up? What?
you know, you know. So I think we'll just have to see what happens with that. I mean, will they bring in Ahsoka? Obi-Wan. Those are all possibilities.
Have you heard the rumor today that just came out today regarding one of those people?
I have not.
Oh, Jonathan, let me tell you. So I was about to go to lunch today, and I got a text from Josh, actually. And so when I was stopped at a red light, I just pulled it up real quick, and it was a link to an article on IGN. So I went and took a look at it. And the rumor is, this is apparently this is information that came from a Disney/Hasbro toy preview. And in this preview, there apparently is, and this one website has a picture that's purporting to be a picture from it, or of it. There's supposedly a Star Wars Rebels toy coming out of Obi-Wan Kenobi.
Oh, you know what? I think I heard about this. Yes, I forgot about it. Yeah.
And the picture's not super huge resolution. It looks like something maybe that was on like a promotional flyer or brochure or something. But I mean, if it's not photoshopped, I mean, it clearly looks like a little Obi-Wan, action figure. And at the bottom it says Rebels Obi-Wan Kenobi. So if that is true, then woo doggy,
yes,
as we say in the South. I really hope that's true. Obviously, Obi-Wan can't be in it all the time because he does have to look after Luke.
Right.
And that is an important job, but he definitely can leave from time to time. And so I would love it if he shows up.
I don't know if you read the book Kenobi.
I totally want to. I've got I downloaded the ebook preview of it, and what I read of it's the first, 10, 15, 20 pages. Just great, and plus it's like a Western, so I still need to read it, but I haven't yet.
Right, so I'm not sure if they're going to get into any of those kind of ideas or not.
Right.
I mean, the kind of idea is kind of a slippery slope, because it's like he said he's going to watch over the boy, but how much did he leave, to go to the other stuff? I mean, I think they'll explore that some. It depends on the extent of how much.
Right.
We don't know. I mean, I think the thing is that I think they want to concentrate on these newer characters.
Right.
But we want to see some older ones.
Yeah. It's the whole thing of bridging the gap, making those connections. I mean, if we're not going to have baby Luke and Leia, if we can't have most of the Jedi because they've been killed by the clones, if we're not going to see even Palpatine and Vader much, although I bet we're going to see them some.
Yeah.
But, if we're not going to see them much, then, who can we bring in to make that connection? And obviously we've got the original trilogy connection in spades just from Star Destroyers and TIE Fighters and all that sort of thing. But what about from the prequel end of things? I mean, Obi-Wan is a great choice, but yeah, you've got to use him sparingly because it is this sort of honorable thing to do of, okay, we failed, we're going to try again with the next generation, with Anakin's children, and so I have a very important job. It's not glamorous, but I'm going to go out and I'm going to watch him. So he's got to be there watching Luke more often than not. But then also, I mean, Ben, if Kenobi is to be taken as something somewhat reliable, Ben Lars is not necessarily wanting Obi-Wan to show up every day. So there's only so much watching Obi-Wan can do. So I think it does allow for him to be, I'm watching over Luke, but I'm also going and checking these other things too, because I can't just sit in their living room all day, that kind of thing.
Right. So, I mean, I know that I've heard that, if, like, for example, like if Vader was the guy that showed up, because he can just kick everybody's butts.
Right.
So you can't just always have Vader there. So I guess the Inquisitor is that we were first introduced several months ago.
Right.
With the spinning lightsaber.
Mm-hmm.
That was similar to like the Grievous toy.
Right.
I mean, I think these are some interesting characters. I mean, for now they look, not. I wouldn't say. I think Cookie Cutter is a little harsh,
Right.
but I mean, they're all. I've heard. I mean, like Steve Bloom, I've been following. I know a lot of his work. Not so much anymore, but back in the early 2000s and late 90s, he did a lot of anime work.
Right.
If people know him from as Spike from Cowboy Bebop. But he's done a lot of gaming, and so he's a pretty big in the voice actor community. I'm definitely excited to hear him.
Yeah, I think it's going to be good. It seems like they've got a pretty good cast. My wife is a big fan of Freddie Prinze Jr. She kind of had a crush on him when she was younger, so she's pretty excited. I mean, even though she's not going to get to see him, she's still kind of excited that he's going to be, one of the leads. And for me, being just a huge fan of the Jedi in general, seeing a Jedi during that time period that survived the Purge, that's going to be very fascinating, to me to see that. And so for me, honestly, I'm most interested in him, Kanan, Chopper, just because I like droids.
Yeah.
And then honestly, the two females, the Twi'lek and the Mandalorian, just because of from the Mandalorian angle, it's the Mandalorians. It's like you said, most of what we know about the Mandalorians comes from the EU, which is not to be taken as the absolute truth. And of course, we know that the Clone Wars already sort of upset people's expectations of the Mandalorians a little bit. Gave Karen Travis an aneurysm. But so how exactly is it? What are her people? What are her people doing now? What's their deal? That'll be interesting. And then Twi'leks. We typically see them in positions of dancers.
Yes.
So having one that's the captain of her ship. I mean, it's like, okay, imagine Han Solo, but a female Twi'lek. That's kind of a neat potential juxtaposition. So then the monster guy, I forgot his name. Yeah, Zeb. The idea that he's the beef, but he's also snarky. That's kind of a neat, again, juxtaposition. And then is it Ezra or Ezri? Is Ezra?
It's Ezra.
Ezra. He's the one I probably know the least about. I'm the least excited about, but I'm sure that as a character he'll be interesting. So I think that's kind of my order. The Kanan, the Jedi, is the one I'm the most interested in. Ezra is the one I'm the least interested in. But I expect that several episodes in, I'm going to be on board with all of them. At least I hope so.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's going to be some kind of bridge. Like Ezra, he apparently doesn't know about these force powers. So we're getting the fact that there's going to be some kind of like connection between Kanan and Ezra.
Yeah.
Because Kanan, I think it's kind of interesting is that I remember I think it was either a novelization or something. It was kind of sad because the master telling her Padawan, we only have to get rid of our lightsabers.
Right. Yeah.
So it looks like from the trailer, he was in kind of a situation where the blaster just wasn't doing it, so he pulls out the lightsaber that's kind of in a hidden pouch.
Yeah.
So that'll be kind of interesting as far as like how, I mean, stormtroopers, I think they're not the smartest things on the block, and that's definitely a complicated thing that whether they get into it or not, I think it's not so much of a big deal. I mean, as far as, I think there's some people, that will be like, okay, lightsaber, we need to alert Vader or alert, I think in this case, the Inquisitor.
Right.
I know I heard that, maybe the Inquisitor can't handle it. Vader needs to step in here.
Yeah.
I think we'll just have to figure out what the abilities of this Inquisitor is. And, does he have the full, is he more like Savage and Ventress, or does he actually kind of have some like Force lightning?
Yeah, and
how powerful?
Yeah, that's the question, because it does bring in the whole rule of two idea, and which of course we dealt with Ventress, and so that'll be, I think, definitely an interesting thing to think about and to see sort of how that dynamic plays out if we get a chance to see it. And then I was thinking too about the fact that it's not like Vader or Palpatine or the Inquisitor know that this random Jedi is going to be involved in creating a rebel alliance. So, they won't necessarily see it immediately as, oh no, this is a major thing. It'll just be like, well, either some Jedi was able to escape after all these years, or some random moron has a lightsaber, and so it'll be, I'm curious to see how they initially deal with the revelation that, hey, this guy might be a Jedi. Is it going to be, stop the presses, we got to do everything we can to stop him, or is it going to be, okay, well, there's going to be a few stragglers that have still managed to elude us, but slowly but slowly we're wiping them all out. So I'm looking forward to seeing sort of what the dark side response to all this is going to be.
Yeah, as am I. I mean, I know, like in the Clone Wars, it was, basically Palpatine and Dooku. But then he had his other little, like Savaz and Ventress.
Right.
And I think that gets into some EU terminology, like the, it's not coming to mind, but a lot of other terminology where it's like they're not actually, the apprentice, actually, but they're like, they're in a specific Sith class. But at some point, Palpatine's like, okay, she's getting a little too powerful.
Right, you gotta get rid of everybody. Yeah.
But we've never had any indication that she can use like Force lightning.
Right.
I guess it gives me kind of the impression that there is some kind of specific training to actually get to that point.
Right, exactly.
I mean, we're going to learn more about that, I mean, maybe not so much in Rebels, because I think we're going to stick mainly to this crew. I mean, I'm hoping we're going to learn some more about the Force, but I think mainly it's going to take place on the ship of the Ghost.
Right.
And another question is that what exactly will they be doing?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, if they're going to be kind of focused in one general area, and you're talking about a galactic-wide empire and a galactic-wide rebel alliance, then how does that idea of these folks sort of sticking together in this one area relate to these big ideas of the big empire and the big rebellion? So, yeah, what are they going to be doing? I think that'll be the question. And again, because it's wide open. It's like, well, how do you start a rebel alliance? How's that work?
Yeah, and I know they said that it takes place like the latter half, I believe, of the 19-year gap, approximately.
Right. Last I heard was like they were saying 5 years before Episode 4.
Yeah, so is it a possibility that we could see Leia?
Yeah, it'd be kind of neat. Yeah.
It's a possibility. I mean, there's all sorts of other characters that are young, that are out there. I mean, we saw that, Padme, she got in politics. I think she was about like 14, maybe even younger when she first became. So, I guess it just depends on where they want to go with that.
Yeah.
I think, for now, I think we're supposed to get a summer special of Rebels.
Right.
Whether it be like, I'm thinking maybe like an hour special of some kind.
Yeah.
I don't expect a theatrical release.
Nah.
And I'm not really expecting, I mean, the Clone Wars movie, as a movie, it didn't really work for me, but as like a, I was really the only like adult in there.
Right.
As like an 18-year-old, full of like all, kid ages. So I think, as a TV arc, I think that works, but George is like, let's put it up on the screen.
Yeah.
This is good. And George does what he wants to do.
This is true.
So I think, and then of course the later animation was even better.
Oh, yes.
That movie, So, and there's always a chance. And I think that's another thing as far as Rebels go. Speaking of like Ahsoka, that's a definitely big thing that's brought up is Ahsoka. Will she appear in Rebels and or Episode 7?
Right.
She's
got to show up in at least one of them. She's just got to.
With all these years spanning, we got like about the 19 years between these trilogies, and then about 30 between those. So it's kind of like, if you build up a timeline in your mind and try to figure out, like, will these people still be alive? Will they still,
Right.
could they be a possibility of being around? I mean, Ahsoka could be somewhere way out there, and she found a little pocket to hide.
Right.
I think we kind of get the clue that, Force, I think, like one of the EU novels, that you can actually, like, if you don't use the Force, you can kind of suppress and hide.
Right.
So speaking of the EU, I mean, it was released, just before the episode 7 news, I believe. Or was it the casting? Was it before or after?
I think it was before, because it was because it was early part of last week, I think it was, and then the casting, news came at the end of last week, I think is the way it worked. But yeah, the Star Wars, or the canon thing, yeah, I think that was first, yeah.
Yeah. So I'm definitely satisfied with that. I mean, I think before, I think it depends on who you talk to. I think that some people, I think that I've always listened to, like, in some Star Wars podcasts, that it was really like, there was different levels. It was like, the movies,
right,
was like GL, then the Clone Wars and other TV, though, where the Gindi series and the Clone Wars series match up is still a problem. I'm not sure if that'll ever be solved. So those two, and then you have the books and the video games, and I think there's even a couple different levels there, because there's some that are can really fit nicely.
Right. Well, that was the thing about the EU, is it was uneven. You would have some books that it's like, this is pretty good and consistent with what has come before in the films, and then you had some things that just felt out of place, or that really didn't work from maybe a story point standpoint. And then you had with this author over here that would make this little tweak and change and addition, and it kind of got into this big convoluted deal. But yeah, there was those levels of canonicity that went all the way down into the what if kind of things, like the Star Wars Infinity comics, things along those lines. And that was a big deal, when that first was sort of revealed as the way that Lucasfilm dealt with canon, because up until that time, the flame wars raging across the internet were pretty intense, and there was nobody to judge. There was no arbiter, there was no standard for saying this is the way that it is. So when that came out, even if it was kind of wishy-washy and it just said, well, look, there's just many subtle levels, at least it was some kind of a guideline, and it did back up what George had been pretty clear about in interviews throughout the years, which is, when he does his films, when he does his thing, it's his thing. And if he wants to use what some novel writer has used, he will do it, but he's not required to follow along with it.
Right. And, I've heard him say other times, or people quoting him, that some things that work, or like that he considers more canon, or like the Shadows of the Empire.
Right, exactly.
That's pretty, as far as like, I think the novelizations, which is, I know that's another thing they said, is that the novelizations are canon unless they contradict.
Right, contradict what's actually seen on screen, or sort of anything down the road.
Right. So I think that's, those, and then, as far as like Darth Plagueis, and there's a few others in there that kind of connect really nicely.
Right.
I think there's some that are kind of way out there. Farther down the future with Leia and the Solo twins.
Right.
It got a little out of hand. I know there's kind of a mix. Some people are unhappy that the Idru is quote unquote dropped.
Right. Well, it's like Dave Filoni said in an interview recently on IGN, when he was talking, it wasn't about this announcement per se, but it relates. He was talking about canon, and he said that, people would ask him, well, why are you changing canon, on the Clone Wars by doing this thing that contradicts what happened in some book? And he said, my response was, actually, we're not, because this is what George's vision is. it was always the case that the novels and the video games were their own deal. And so, the people that were really upset over the announcement that the EU is no longer canon, it's not that the EU is no longer canon. It's just this is the most explicit statement of a principle that we've had really since the time of George writing episode 1, which is the EU is there, and if he wants to use it, he will, but if he doesn't want to, he doesn't have to. I think the big difference now is that unlike when the prequels began, we are now in a period of time in which the powers that be at Lucasfilm are contemplating just tons of story that's going to be coming out. I mean, George was envisioning episode 1, episode 2, episode 3, and then his saga would be complete. And so he didn't necessarily need this big earthquaking announcement in order to deal with 3 screenplays worth of story that may or may not be consistent with the EU. But now we're looking at a whole new era. We've got Rebels, we've got episode 7, 8, and 9, we've got other Star Wars films, we've got the books that are all going to be a part of this one cohesive story. And so in order to do that, I think, you had to have this clear, explicit, direct statement saying the EU is not what is real going forward. You can still buy the books, we'll still write books in that world, but this is not what we have going forward. It's not new, it's just direct.
Right, and I know some of the books are now going to be with the label Legends.
Right, exactly.
Kind of like like whenever they release DVDs and stuff, they'll put like special edition or platinum or that kind of thing. And I mean, you look on Star Wars Wiki and they have a whole slew of new books, including Rebels books.
Yeah.
They have like, next year they have one called Lords of the Sith, where like Vader and Palpatine will be on some kind of instance where they'll have to like work together.
Right.
So that'll be interesting. So we have a couple of those. A lot of So most of them, we got a Tarkin standalone.
Right.
But there's a lot of Rebels ones coming up, whether they're children's books or hardcovers. And I think they're all going to be, canon, as far as we know.
Yeah.
I mean, it's definitely an interesting thing. It's like the idea of, this is kind of a interesting comparison, but like I know like Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., connecting a TV series to a movie, never really considered such a thing, but this is an even bigger feat, you're having like Disney book group, you have authors, you have Lucasfilm all working together for one
giant story world. Yeah.
I mean, I think it's definitely going to be interesting going forward. I think they're going to have their own challenges up and going, but I think one thing that will be different is that there won't be so much.
Right, and it'll be more contained, and it won't be authors having arguments with each other about how to present a character.
Yeah, we're not going to have these 15 book series. I mean, I think one of the last series I couldn't get through, because it was just too long. Eventually, I might get back to it eventually, but there's just so much out there. I mean, I think, I'd be interested in some of the most interesting Star Wars is stuff from the Old Republic, Star Wars Knights of the Republic. I mean, that's some extremely interesting stuff. And, in that they had the Jedi temple was on a more remote planet opposed to Coruscant.
Right.
It was on Dantooine, I believe, and there was it was all surrounded by grass and grassland and stuff. So that could be another option opposed to like a city like Coruscant.
Right.
So that could be kind of I think it's be a little bit kind of important not to go like the monk way of like no technology, but have like the basic to be a Jedi.
Right. Yeah. That would be, and it would be sort of consistent with the theme, especially of Return of the Jedi, how the fuzzy little Ewoks were able to take down the Empire. So, the idea that technology isn't the answer for everything. So,
right. So I think lots of options, tons of places to go. I mean, that's a advantage of going, forward.
Right.
I mean, my question is that, I mean, how, I mean, I know some people are a little unhappy about losing some of the EU, but I'm just wondering when the characters released out, what is going to be the response?
Right. Right.
I mean, if there's a Jaina Solo, but there's not a, what's the other one?
Jason.
It's not a Jason. I mean, there's going to be some kind of out.
Right. Yeah.
There's going to be some kind of vocal minority.
Yeah.
I could be wrong, but I think there's going to be, even though they made this announcement, I think there's still going to be some kind of backlash.
Yeah, well, I think you've still got people that are holding on to the idea that, okay, well, maybe the plot of the Heir to the Empire series, for example, isn't going to be what 7, 8, and 9 is going to be about. And even if the idea of the Yuzon Vong, for example, maybe we're not going to see. Okay, but that doesn't mean that we won't see Mara Jade, that we won't have the Solo twins, that we won't have Ben Skywalker and all that. I think you have people that are they know because they have been told the EU storyline is not what we'll have going forward, but they're thinking, okay, so just the storyline's not what we're going to have, but those characters, of course, we're going to have. And so I think that if we do end up finding out that, as a matter of fact, there is no Solo twins, yeah, I think you're exactly right. There's going to be people that are going to be upset because they're still holding on to the idea that the EU was at least in some sense true, and to have that taken away, I mean, I understand that it's going to be disappointing. I'm not trying to look down my nose at the people for feeling that way, but my guess is they're going to be disappointed, because my guess is that you're not going to have the Solo twins, you're not going to have Anakin, and so on.
Yeah. So I guess overall, I think there's a lot of options, but a lot of time you can narrow it down to two kind of things. Just like the Jedi and the Sith, there's two options. Sometimes there's only two options. Do you go left or do you go right?
Right.
What's the fork in the road? And I think there's a lot of forks.
Yeah.
Going on.